Hey everyone, welcome to Nightfall Chronicles. Tonight, you'll journey back to the muddy fields of 1066, where dust-choked air and blood-spattered earth set the stage for conquest. You'll see hobnailed boots slog through horse manure, shields rattling as arrows rain down, and kings falling amidst the chaos. So dim the lights, slip under your favorite blanket, and before you settle in, take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. Now, brace yourself for the terror of Hastings, all in hushed tones designed to lull you to sleep, eventually. You awaken before dawn to the acrid tang of fermenting porridge congealed overnight. The steely bitterness of cold gruel seeps through your tin bowl. Every spoonful mocks you with its chalky texture. Sweat-slicked chainmail presses against your skin while the stench of horse dung curls around your nostrils. A rotten egg odor from a half-broken straw mattress lingers in the chilly air. A stray dog's rancid breath, drawn by yesterday's meat scraps, nudges your heels. The coppery taste of old blood crusted on your helmet brim flickers on your tongue. Bits of sour curd from spoiled cheese cling stubbornly to your teeth. And that's only breakfast. The battlefield smells threaten to upstage even this rancid repast. The sharp bite of vinegar on stale bread leaves your lips puckering. Mud-caked boots squelch, releasing subtle wafts of wet earth and manure. In your mouth, the tang of metal from a dented helmet tastes sharper than any dagger. The acrid smoke of distant campfires drifts in currents that sting your throat. A faint whiff of spoiled wine from cracked barrels drapes over the air like a toxic veil. Sweat-soaked tunics cling to your ribs, carrying the musk of yesterday's march. Your nostrils buffer slower than a lo-fi feed, but the stench of fresh manure still hits you in HD. Crusty jam from overripe berries refuses to wash away. Your senses reel, but there's no pause. Orders bark your name before the sun even rises. The fleeting sweetness of honey-glazed meat, now cold and congealed, tantalizes then disappoints. Damp wool cloaks radiate the sour musk of body heat trapped overnight. The bitter tang of burnt grain follows every exhale. In the distance, a butcher's cleaver rings against bone, its copper echo on the breeze. Pewter tankards of thin ale slosh foul foam across your calloused hands. Warm guts of yesterday's luck still cling to a tattered banner overhead. The taste of sweat from your own brow mingles with that of your companions. A single breath brings the full orchestra of decay, sweat, blood, and soil in grim harmony. You choke, you gag, but there's nowhere to hide. The day demands you march. A sliver of stale cheese crumbles between your teeth with every step. The pungent aroma of boiled cabbage drifts past a cook's tent, promising disappointment. Moist straw piles exhale the fetid ghosts of countless boots. Blackened fat from yesterday's feast clings to a discarded spoon. Your tongue recoils at a drop of stagnant water trapped in a dent. The metallic twang of blood on your lips rounds out the menu. A breeze carries the faint sweetness of wildflowers across the mire, a cruel contrast. Damp leather scuffs against iron, emitting a sour whine. That cruel floral promise fades the moment your feet hit the churned mud beyond camp. Fresh dung splatters across your greaves with each splash. The acrid bite of wildfire smoke from distant torches stings your lungs. Mud-brushed cloaks reek of damp stone and old rot. A severed hoof, half buried in muck, wheezes up a stink that makes your eyes water. The stale whisper of last night's wine on broken mugs lingers in tattered straps. Each swallow brings the bitter reminder that there is no respite. The clay-caked scent of your own fatigue seeps through every pore. Even the morning air tastes of iron and foreboding. And yet, you press on, nourished only by grim necessity and the promise of steel meeting shield. That's your gourmet breakfast, medieval edition. Every flavor a reminder that comfort died with the first horn blast. No spoon, no table, only the earth itself as your plate. You might long for a modern cafe's worst latte after this. But here, the only roast you'll taste is your own mortality. Bon appetit. The sergeant strides along the ranks, his chainmail clinking with each deliberate step and forcing every man to steady his breath. When he halts beside you, the weight of his pike reminds you that even the smallest slip could topple the line. Sweat beads at your temples as you adjust the strap of your helmet, determined not to betray any hint of fear. Rumors of Norman cunning swirl through the camp, tightening your gut with every whispered tale of feigned retreats. The lieutenant's voice cuts through the murmur as he recalls Harold's lightning march south from York on the 24th of September. Envy flickers between you and a veteran knight whose ornate gauntlet glints, promising glory you have yet to earn. That touch of competition sharpens your focus, reminding you that valor might sway a lord's favor. Shields lift in unison, forming an unbroken wall that pulses with collective resolve. Underneath that gleaming facade, however, tension coils like a serpent, ready to strike at the first sign of weakness. Banners flutter in the breeze, their embroidered lions and crosses dancing across the morning sky. A hush falls when the captain mentions William's feint tactics, and you swallow the lump of dread lodged in your throat. Although the sun climbs steadily, its warmth offers little comfort against the chill of uncertainty. Spears jostle in the breeze, each shaft a silent promise of violence. Stories of arrow storms that felled men by the dozens make every warrior's heart beat faster. Beneath the fluttering standards, knights exchange solemn nods, as if borrowing courage from one another. Faith and fear mingle with the musky scent of iron and sweat. The captain's mirror-bright breastplate belies the weight of command on his shoulders. Allegiances weave a fragile tapestry here, where loyalty and ambition hang by a single thread. In the distance, the clang of blacksmith hammers drifts from the rear lines, ensuring that weapons remain battle-ready. Even that rhythmic hammering carries an unspoken urgency deeper than any trumpet call. A breathless messenger arrives with news that William will delay his attack until after midday, testing both your patience and nerves. You catch a flicker of relief before steeling yourself again, knowing the wait can be its own torture. Faces around you grow pale, yet resolve hardens in every pair of eyes. As the lieutenant reminds you that control of England hangs in the balance, pride and panic vie for dominance in your chest. Spears tap shields in syncopation, an odd reassurance amid the brewing storm. Every man clasps his weapon with renewed purpose, ready for orders to transform tension into action. For a fleeting moment, the world seems held together by taut nerves and sharpened steel. A sudden gust flutters the edge of a tattered banner, unveiling a faded lion crest that seems to roar at you. Even in its worn state, the emblem stirs a fierce sense of belonging. Memories of past triumphs and scattered bones weave through your thoughts like ghostly threads. The lieutenant's final command rings clear. Hold firm until aid arrives, then press the attack. With that charge, the tide of fear recedes just enough for resolve to wash over you. A knight behind you whispers a prayer, wielding faith as another form of armor. Though no holy text guarantees victory, that simple invocation steadies his hand. You draw strength from every fervent whisper, feeling unity bind you more tightly than any metal clasp. On this field, faith and steel merge, each as vital as the other when battle erupts. A single trumpet blast splits the air, igniting the first wave of Norman archers. Shields snap into position, and you lean forward, braced for the inevitable onslaught. Before arrows can darken the sky, you lock eyes with the sergeant, whose silent nod steals your heart. A collective inhale surges through the ranks as barbs whistle from afar. Chaos looms, yet the bond within the shield wall holds, anchoring each man in place. Spears align at precise angles, creating a lattice of hope against the unknown. You taste the iron tang of adrenaline mingled with the sulphurous hint of distant torches. Every sinew in your body hums with readiness, awaiting the clash of steel. That moment of calm before impact feels both endless and fleeting. The ground shudders as the first shafts strike shields with thunderous impact. Instead of recoiling, you brace, letting each collision remind you of your purpose. And even as the rain of arrows ebbs, the pulse of battle thrums in your veins, an addictive promise of what's to come. Your gauntlets press heavy against worn wood, each callus painted a bruise on your palms. The coarse wool tunic beneath your chainmail itches relentlessly along the collarbone. Leather straps bite into your shoulders as you adjust the weight of your harness. A shudder runs through your arms when the shield's iron rim rubs raw against bruised ribs. The rough edge of your leather boots grinds into the mud, compressing into soft, oozing suction. Chain links rattle with each step, their metallic clamor ringing against bone. The stiff padding beneath your cuirass creaks as you twist, sounding like creaking floorboards. Stray threads from a fraying cloak snag on nails, tugging at your wrist with each movement. Every inch of fabric and metal reminds you that comfort died long ago, replaced by the relentless press of armor. Your helm's visor scrapes veneer hinges, producing a shrill chirrup whenever you peer through its slits. On your back, the weight of a longbow's quiver sways, tethered by rough-hewn straps. The braided leather of your belt rubs against your hip, the friction stinging with every pivot. Dust from the road grinds into seams and stitches, turning your garments into sandpaper. A loose patch of fur lining tickles your neck, each bristle feeling like a tiny siege engine. The saddle leather of nearby destriers creases under saddle sores, sweat turning hide brittle to the touch. You lean your hand against a splintered post, its jagged grain slicing into your palm. Your spear's haft, grooved by hundreds of grips, molds perfectly to your calloused fingers. Underneath it all, the padded arming doublet wriggles uncomfortably, trapping pins against your skin. In the press of the shield wall, your elbow scrapes against rough burlap, the sting sharp enough to distract you. Textures converge in an uneasy tapestry, a reminder that flesh endures only as long as armor allows. Blood-soaked padding from a fallen comrade peeks through a gap in his hauberk, sticky and cold to the touch. Damp mail sleeves chafe against leather vambraces, creating friction that whispers of blisters to come. The heft of your sword's hilt demands careful balance, planting its pommel firmly in your palm. Trampled reeds beneath boots press into your soles, the fibrous snap sending jolts through your toes. The canvas of a discarded tarp tugs at your knee, its strands catching on torn mail links. When you shift stance, the butt of your spear jab rumbles through your cloaked torso. Leather kneecaps on a neighboring recruit squeak like rusted hinges in the symphony of war. A jagged stone lodged in your boot insole courts, a blister that blossoms with each step. The rim of your shield leaves a filthy stripe across your forearm, gritty as gravel. Beneath you, churned mud acts like suction cups, yanking at your heels with sinister glee. Each contact point screams a reminder. This battle isn't just fought in blood, but also in the small torments of touch. A sweat-drenched coif plasters itself to your scalp, its padding suffocating in the midday heat. The cold ring of a metal bracer snaps against your wrist when you raise an arm, startling in its clarity. Leather borders of tattered gloves fray and stick as undergrowth brushes past during a flanking march. A splinter works its way into your finger when you steady your spear against a wooden shield boss. Beneath your mail chausses, a prickly itch from coarse wool bites at the backs of your knees. A broken buckle under your chin rattles like chattering teeth whenever the wind picks up. The crossbar of a pike whines against the earth, the vibration transmitting through your palms. Your brace's inside edge gouges a thin line into your arm, a souvenir of constant abrasion. The ocean of armor creaks and groans as you shift weight under pressure. A chunk of clinging mud breaks free beneath your pauldron, landing with a dull plop on hardened ground. Even in the eye of the storm, the siege of the senses wages on. This is war by the measure of every stitch and rivet. That's armor for you. A constant reminder that you're encased in metal, yet wildly vulnerable beneath it. If only there were a spa day in Hastings. Imagine the luxury of a mud mask. We'll save that indulgence for the true victors. On the morning of the 25th of September, 1066, weary English forces gathered at Stamford Bridge beneath a cloudless sky, each man's resolve as taut as the strings on his bow. Harold Godwinson's army, hardened by Scottish skirmishes, moved with surprising speed across the Yorkshire moors, their leather boots stirring up plumes of dust in gentle waves. The rhythmic echo of hobnailed soles clattering against stone pathways resonated with a steady heartbeat, a calming yet determined cadence. Spears and longbows rested lightly against shoulders, their weight a familiar companion rather than a burdensome shackle. Shields, polished in the dawn's glow, caught the pale sunlight in soft reflections, hinting at disciplined ranks rather than frenzy. A subtle wind carried the faint scent of ripening wheat from nearby fields, intertwining with the earthy tang of turned soil. Each step forward seemed measured by an unspoken promise of protection and duty, a gentle pulse guiding every stride. Messengers on swift hooves darted between units, their muffled hoofbeats blending into the ambient symphony of preparation. The hush before battle settled like a warm blanket, tempering even the boldest hearts with a serene resolve. In that moment of quiet anticipation, the men drew breath as one, steadying their minds before the approaching storm. As dawn unfurled its first golden rays, Harold surveyed the ranks from high ground, his gaze calm and unwavering. Discussion flowed in low tones, mapping the route to the river crossing where Viking hosts awaited their challenge. Archers readied their longbows with deliberate care, each arrow slipping smoothly from quiver to hand. Sentries on watch paused to adjust their chainmail, ensuring each link lay flat against the morning chill. The distant glimmer of steel on the horizon marked the advance guard's approach, their silhouettes soft against rolling hills. Foot soldiers formed disciplined lines as the ground beneath their feet pulsed with silent readiness. Shield walls aligned like puzzle pieces, edges locked firmly to offer a united defense. A light breeze caressed plumes atop helmets, stirring a collective exhale of anticipation. The coordinated calm of the ranks spoke volumes of shared confidence, an unhurried unity before the unfolding trial. Moments later, the thunder of hoofbeats heralded the Norwegian earls in full force, their banners rippling in rhythmic waves. A hush fell once more, the kind that stretches and recedes like gentle ocean swells. Harold's officers exchanged concise orders, voices blending seamlessly into the quiet morning. Without fanfare or rush, the archers stepped forward until a soft murmur of tension hummed through their fingertips. Then, in a breath-held instant, longbows bent and released, sending a whispering flight of arrows across the field. The projectiles arced gracefully, disappearing into the distant sky before a subdued patter marked their descent. Harold Hardrada's men rippled in surprise, shields raised with graceful precision to intercept the silent shower. Each impact resonated with a muted tone, more of a respectful nod to skilled craftsmanship than a cry of devastation. The archers' composure held firm as they reloaded with measured breaths, maintaining an almost meditative rhythm. Spears charged with silent determination, their polished tips a soft promise of steadfast resistance. In that exchange, the battlefield breathed as one living entity, each motion a verse in a calm, harmonious prelude. As shields clashed and bodies moved in synchronized surges, the clash bore more elegance than chaos. The muted clang of steel carried a slow, deliberate melody, rising and falling like distant church bells. Men felt the weight of history in every thrust, an inherited solemnity guiding each movement. A brief lull followed, during which archers and spearmen alike closed gentle ranks for a moment's respite. Dust settled in lazy eddies around booted feet, tracing soft patterns on the battlefield's worn tapestry. Even amid resolve and rising tension, a serene cadence wove through every action, threading calm through conflict. As the sun climbed toward midday, a lone horn sounded its low, resonant call to signal the final advance. Harold rallied his forces with a measured nod, eyes reflecting confidence that rippled quietly through the ranks. Forward they pressed, each footfall a reminder of steadfast devotion, unwavering and true. Against the setting of an ancient land, their silent determination stood as a gentle beacon, guiding the world toward its next story. As dawn softened into morning, William's forces assembled on the ridge above, their banners fluttering in a gentle breeze that carried the scent of dew-laden grass. Norman archers settled into ranks behind hedgerows, their eyes keen and unhurried as they nocked arrows with deliberate precision. Below, cavalry units stood in loose formation, the polished curvature of their helmets catching stray beams of sunlight. Whispers of strategy drifted across the slope as commanders in muted tones outlined a plan honed by years of continental campaigns. The heart of William's tactic lay in feigned retreats, a graceful dance of advance and withdrawal designed to unravel disciplined defenses. At a signal, a subtle shift of a plume, Norman foot soldiers broke into a retreat that seemed as sincere as a faltering knight in a tale well told. English ranks tightened their shields, stepping forward cautiously, each movement measured by an internal rhythm of cautious promise. Suddenly, archers slipped behind cover and loosed a volley of arrows that hissed through the air like distant prayers. In that fleeting silence, the battlefield seemed to breathe as one, a soft inhale gathering strength for what would come next. The Norman withdrawal resumed, smooth and unhurried, guiding Harold's men away from their solid shield wall with gentle coaxing. Cavalry then wheeled in a silent arc, boots sinking softly into the churned earth as they circled back toward the unsuspecting English. At that moment, a second rain of arrows arced gracefully overhead, their tips glinting like whispered reminders of hidden strategy. Spears and pikes arose once more, a layered web of defenses knitting together with the ease of practiced artisans. William watched from his mount, eyes calm beneath his helm as he gauged every shift in Edwardian formation. A single horn note, low and steady, summoned reserve troops from concealed folds in the hillside. They moved forward with a hush, the faint rustle of mail and leather barely audible beneath the quiet thrumming of bows. Even the most subtle march carried a measured pulse, a hushed melody weaving through the tableau of conflict. The English faltered for an instant, unsettled by the rhythmic trickery unfolding before them. Harold's captains exchanged brief glances, their directives conveyed in calm, clipped tones that cut through the still air. Arrows struck shields with soft thuds. each impact a gentle reminder of the invisible web closing in around the defenders. Yet the English line held firm, its cohesion a testament to years of northern hardship and unbroken resolve. High above, William's banner flapped in a slow, deliberate wave, as though beckoning fate itself to play its part. A Norman cavalry charge followed, horses treading lightly across trodden ground, their movements precise and almost balletic. In that orchestrated swirl of motion, the battlefield became a living tableau, its elements shifting in harmonious exchange. Steel met steel in muffled echoes, blades tracing soft arcs through the morning haze. Men pressed forward in measured surges, their breath steady, their purpose clear without a trace of panic. At the flank, a flurry of movement scattered mail clinging to armor as knights maneuvered with quiet finesse. Horses exhaled in gentle clouds, their riders leaning into curves with the grace of riders tuning a complex machine, almost like an optimized algorithm. Within moments, the English line buckled, the feigned retreat complete, and William's trap springing with unassuming elegance. The unfolding moment felt inevitable, a carefully coded sequence that led every piece to align in silent precision. Harold rallied a last cohesive stand at the hill's crest, his banner rising against the pale sky in resolute defiance. Around him, shields overlapped in a living mosaic, deflecting glancing blows and absorbing the Norman advance. Squires moved through the ranks, offering water in wooden cups, their movements a serene ballet of support. Norman knights closed in with disciplined calm, each circle of hooves a soft drum roll accompanying fate's approach. Even as forces collided, the rhythm remained unhurried, a testament to strategies shaped by patience and precision. In that final encounter, the clash resonated as a muted crescendo, blades whispering against one another with stoic grace. Harold's last arrow flew true but destined to rest harmlessly in the grass, another note in an ancient symphony. Then, as silence settled, William's standard rose over the crest, its quiet triumph echoing across the ridge. The field lay still, awash in gentle light as men surveyed the aftermath with measured restraint. Dust drifted in pale tendrils, settling like soft memories upon the fallen earth. Survivors on both sides knelt in hushed acknowledgement, offering prayers that mingled with the wind's soft sighs. The day's events felt as though written in slow motion, each movement echoing through the ages with composed dignity. Even as dusk approached, the ridge held its quiet authority, storied by those who bore witness to stratagems crafted in patience rather than fury. William's measured conquest closed another chapter of history, its echoes settling into the soft folds of memory. Ahead lay the path to Hastings, where destiny awaited beneath gentler skies, and the next story would unfold in hushed tones. The morning sun filtered through mottled clouds as warriors shifted their weight under layered mail shirts. The chainmail's interlocking rings moved with a soft whisper, each metallic loop sliding against its neighbor in a harmonious murmur. Heavy leather jerkins, stiffened by weeks of wear, pressed against ribs with a gentle pressure, molding to the contours of the body. Beneath coifs, padded arming caps cradled each forehead in broad cotton bands, absorbing the subtle throb of steel helmets. Gauntleted hands flexed within segmented plates, the joints creaking softly in response to each deliberate motion. When spears rested on shoulders, the coarse wood's grain teased the fingertips, its familiar ridges grounding each man in the moment. Tabards draped over mail bore silken threads of heraldry, their textured patterns cool against the heat rising from exertion. Crinkled leather boots, laced high above ankles, creaked at every bend, the soles imprinting dusty earth with soft indentations. The gentle jostle of suspension straps redistributed weight across belts and shoulders, a subtle choreography of comfort and constraint. Amid the weight of armor and fabric, each warrior felt a steady reassurance in these familiar textures, a tactile calm before renewed motion. As the early haze lifted, riders tested the supple resilience of mailed choses, pressing leather-bound knees into horse flanks. The fabric yielded in slight give, flexing but never losing its protective shape, reassuring each knight of its steadfast reliability. Mail coifs were drawn snugly over ears, the interwoven steel rings brushing against the nape with a soothing consistency. Surcoats, weather-beaten and stained by travel, carried the imprint of countless voyages across stone and river ford. Fingers traced the raised embroidery on surcoats to recall family crests, each stitch a soft memory under worn fabric. Belt pouches, carved from supple hide, swung with melodic clinks as coins shifted inside like whispered echoes. Maneuvering a sword required a delicate balance, its hilt wrapped in rough leather to prevent slipping from damp palms. When meeting shield rim, the flat oak surface felt solid and comforting, a gentle partner in defense rather than adversary. A steel greave encased the calf, its curved metal warm from sunlight, easing into shape against the gentle swell of muscle. Each item of armor and garb offered a comforting narrative in texture and weight, grounding hearts as much as bodies. Marching resumed with the clang of cuirass plates, the gentle percussion resonating like distant bells through mail-lined torsos. Padded gambesons cushioned impact, their thick cotton layers softening each step on rocky ground. The seam of a sleeve rubbed against a forearm, creating a familiar warmth that reassured in its constancy. Hand grips of crossbows, bound in braided leather, pressed into palms with the promise of controlled release. Straps creaked softly as shields were hoisted higher, the hide exterior stretching ever so slightly under the pull. When resting, a knight could remove helm and unfurl hair damp with sweat, the sudden release of pressure a deep sigh. Gauntlets slid off in smooth arcs, revealing skin warmed by exertion and cooled by the breeze. Silk scarves worn by noble envoys fluttered between mail links, their light weave a tender contrast to the steel's heft. A transfer from horse to ground brought the jolt of reins and saddlebow into hand, the leather rough yet yielding under palm. In each transfer and shift, the soldiers found solace in the constant interplay of pressure and release, as stable as dawn's gentle arrival. Across the ridge, foot soldiers flexed greaves, their mail chauces chafing with a dull, soothing rub against layered linen. Belts of thin metal plates overlapped like enormous fish scales, each overlapping panel resonating with a soft clasp. An archer's bracer pressed against the forearm, the hardened leather plain but reassuring in its steadfast grip. Shoulders bore the brunt of journeys in surcoats stained by sweat, their fading dyes whispering of time and travel. Helmets with nasal guards offered a firm embrace, the cold steel a gentle cradle against the sun's warming rays. During brief pauses, soldiers ran a gauntleted thumb across shield bosses, testing the smooth convex surface for hidden dents. The vibration from an incoming missive scribbled on parchment transferred gently through a scroll tube, its wooden body textured and warm. When crossing streams, mail-layered breeches rustled in harmony with trickling water, droplets pattering a soft, consistent cadence. The blend of materials, cotton, steel, leather, silk, created a tapestry of sensation that soothed as much as it protected. Together, these tactile echoes formed a collective hum of endurance, each touchpoint reinforcing shared resolve. As the final push toward Hastings began, the combined weight of armaments felt less like burden and more like an extension of will. Fingers wrapped around reins sensed every nuance of horse movement through elastic leather, deepening trust between rider and steed. The fabric of cloaks swept low, brushing armored calves in a familiar, gentle caress. Within the lattice of mail, heat settled gently, offering a cocoon of contained warmth against the crisp morning air. Shields, when lowered, produced a soft thud against packed earth, a steady refrain of grounded determination. In the hush before engagement, the soft symphony of textures stood as the final prelude, reminding all present of the quiet strength in unity. And in that moment of tactile serenity, even the weightiest armor felt as light as an unspoken promise. The wind whispers across Senlac Hill, carrying a faint scent of damp earth mingled with time-worn decay. As shovels breach the topsoil, each scoop releases a subtle aroma of humus, rich, slightly sour, and oddly invigorating under the midday glare. A quick dip of a gloved fingertip into the trench yields a hint of coppery iron, as if ancient coins had been ground to dust and sprinkled into the air. Layers of ochre soil reveal pottery fragments crusted with chalky residue, exhaling faint chalk dust that lingers on the tongue like a forgotten chalkboard lesson. Beneath mottled sediment, decayed wooden timbers exude a whisper of resin and ash, evoking long-extinguished pyres smouldering in the mind's eye. When a trowel gently traces a skeletal rib, the air carries a metallic tang of iron phosphate, reminiscent of rusted armor laid to rest. The warmth of the sun-baked trench walls brings a muted mustiness, recalling hidden catacombs and the hush of distant corridors. In exposed pits, faint whiffs of sulfur mingle with organic decay, suggesting ancient fires and the slow surrender of flesh to earth. Amid these sensory revelations, the site breathes with an almost sacred patience, inviting quiet reflection. Broken arrowheads emerge from silted layers, their flint edges releasing a dry, stinging scent like crushed birch bark. Nearby, scattered chain links yield a gentle metallic aroma that drifts upward in lazy spirals. Soil chemistry tests note elevated phosphate levels, hinting at long-lost camps and the gradual seep of blood into every pore of the battlefield. When wet spade tips touch clay-bound stratum, a faint earthy sweetness wafts forth, as though the land itself exhales sighs of memory. Small fragments of leather strap, now brittle and darkened, exude a distant tang of tannin, revived by exposure to fresh air. Researchers pause to taste the dust, careful not to ingest more than a whisper, yet capturing nuances of ancient feasts and fasts. A subtle breeze carries the aroma of wild grasses from nearby fields, their sweet green notes offsetting heavier scents of decay. In that stillness between excavation and analysis, the senses themselves become scholarly instruments. Bones laid bare in mass graves emit a faintly sharp odor, softened by centuries, but still bearing whispers of life surrendered. Isotope tests on enamel fragments reveal mineral signatures of riverine fish and woodland game, hinting at diets that shaped survival odds. When small ceramic vessels are upturned, the inside aroma carries murky traces of barley mash and chipped ale. Broken bits of comb, their teeth fouled by hair and dust, give off a musky perfume, oddly intimate, after a millennium underground. Even fragments of oxhide cordage, stiff with age, retain a dusty, leathery fragrance that mingles with the scent of turned earth. Metal detectors pinpoint a cluster of iron buckles, their extraction filling nostrils with a muted iron bloom. Each breath draws in scores of stories, sipped slowly like potent historical elixirs. Excavators uncover patches of dark soil where decayed organic matter concentrated, each patch fragrant with remnants of campfires. Charred embers embedded in tufa stones offer a smoky perfume that intertwines with the orchard-like sweetness of baked clay. Clay pipe fragments carry a faint scent of tobacco substitutes, a ghostly breath from unexpected corners of medieval life. In test pits, slow drips of groundwater stir subterranean aromas, a cold mineral tang that sharpens awareness. Pollen samples stir a whisper of wildflowers, meadows long reclaimed yet preserved in microscopic grains. As soil pH hides shift, small puffs of fine powder trail upward, tasting faintly alkaline on curious tongues. A broken buckle's curve is traced by an air of decayed metal that hints at once proud armor now surrendered to humidity. The convergence of scents paints a layered fragrance map of life, death, and survival etched deep in the earth. Nearby, a trove of coins is lifted from a concealed pouch, each disc exhaling a brisk, metallic note like the promise of long-lost treasure. Organic residue on wooden buckets yields a sour-sweet scent of spoiled milk, an unexpected peek at daily rations gone awry. Soil scraped from a shallow trench carries the faint aroma of clay-rich waters like a sip of raw stream on the tongue. When vestiges of woolen cloth emerge, they give off a sheepy musk that mingles with musty soil, a reminder of folded cloaks and damp nights. Fragments of food-colored glazes on pottery speak through subtle smell echoes, berries, honey, and the fleeting sweetness of medieval kitchens. Each inhaled note becomes a breadcrumb, guiding researchers through the labyrinth of centuries. The cool dusk air settles in the excavation, releasing a final breath of damp moss and ancient flint. As daylight fades, the hill exhales its layered scents with satisfying resolution. In the hush that follows, every whiff feels like a whispered confession from the past. Bones, soil, and artifacts unite in a complex olfactory tapestry that even time cannot fully erase. The site's aroma lingers, proof that history isn't silent, merely waiting to be breathed in. This aromatic codex ensures that even unseen victims speak through scent, a sensory diary etched into Senlac's loam. Who knew death and dirt could smell so educational? Post-World War I, British archaeologists petitioned the government for official digs at Senlac Hill, citing scholarly merit over fiscal strain. The Ministry of Works hesitated, balancing intellectual curiosity against national budgets stretched thin by rebuilding efforts. Private donors from aristocratic circles stepped forward, their names promised on marble plinths before any trowel pierced the earth. Universities dispatched polished delegations, each eager to negotiate excavation rights with the stoic landowners. Professors in crisp tweed sparred over lineage claims in Norman studies, equating academic prestige to endowment size. Local farmers weighed grants against the inconvenience of trenches slicing through their pastures. Council chambers became arenas for heated debate, aldermen trading barbed quips about heritage's place beside productivity. Press outlets fanned the flames, portraying scholars as aloof dilettantes disconnected from rural livelihoods. Beneath polite negotiations, ambitions simmered, transforming scholarly digs into high-stakes power plays. By the 1950s, UNESCO's interest brought an international twist to the fray, framing heritage as a post-war bridge between nations. France and England engaged in cultural diplomacy, sponsoring joint exhibitions to showcase shared Norman roots. Norman descendants lobbied for co-curation rights, arguing for trans-channel stewardship of the finds. British trustees bristled at foreign claims, guarding artifacts as symbols of national identity. Grant approvals hinged on diplomatic niceties, each funding round accompanied by cross-channel pleasantries. Museums vied for exclusive display rights, planning grand unveilings to eclipse rival institutions. Curators flitted between BBC studios and academic symposia, crafting narratives that bolstered patriotic pride. In secretive corridors, archaeology transcended excavation. It became a stage for cultural one-upmanship. The 1970s introduced environmental regulations, demanding impact assessments before any spade broke ground. Conservationists and developers forged uneasy alliances, each seeking a voice in the site's management. Heritage groups brandished antiquities laws like legal sabers, ready to halt mechanized excavators. Local councils courted public support with glossy brochures touting tourism revenue. Economic projections envisioned hotels and gift shops sprouting from ancient trenches. Tensions flared in planning boards, where dusty ledgers met theoretical frameworks. Academics fretted that commodification would reduce solemn ground to kitschy baubles. Between profit motives and preservationist zeal, Senlac Hill balanced on a fine tightrope of public interest. By the 1990s, digital mapping offered new leverage. Geophysicists pitched radar surveys over traditional trenching. Vendors of ground-penetrating radar courted research directors with promises of non-invasive X-ray vision. Funding shifted toward flashy data outputs that dazzled donors at gala fundraisers. Traditionalists lamented the sidelining of trowel and brush, decrying modern tech as a threat to artisanal expertise. Grant committees argued ROI, return on investment, against ROI, records of interment. Boardroom talks buzzed with fiscal jargon, assessing line items rather than stratigraphic layers. Public lectures morphed into slick multimedia presentations, anomalies on screen stealing the limelight. Even as technology smoothed the dig process, political intrigue adapted, proving innovation never curbs ambition. At the millennium's turn, community archaeology invited locals to handle gloves and trowels, heritage for hire. Heritage officers hailed it as democratic digging, while skeptics sniffed PR spin to quell criticism. Volunteers morphed into political symbols, their enthusiasm leveraged to legitimize institutional authority. Funding panels rewarded bids, promising broad participation, banners proclaiming "the people's dig." Social media campaigns followed, smiling amateurs beside half-exposed relics, heritage trending as a hashtag. Behind the facade, donors quietly bankrolled programs, their names whispered in closed-door ceremonies. Under the guise of shared heritage, power brokers choreographed influence with precision. Today, legal frameworks enshrine Senlac Hill's protection, yet funding skirmishes persist at county and UNESCO levels. Excavation permits still spark lobbyist rallies, papers stamped with institutional seals as talismans of authority. Grant proposals read like treaties, laden with fine print and subtle ultimatums. When significant finds emerge, press releases tout collaborative triumph, blending spin with substance. Scholars discreetly drop benefactor names like medals, each discovery another notch on their political belt. Archaeology, where dusty bones and buried grudges surface together, talk about digging up the past. Centuries-old teeth fragments yield chemical clues far more eloquent than any scribe's ink. Carbon-13 and nitrogen-15 signatures map childhood landscapes, inland fields, or coastal inlets. Elevated nitrogen levels whisper of fish-rich diets, while low carbon levels hint at reliance on wheat and barley staples. Analysis of strontium ratios ties some warriors to chalky hills, their origins traced to chalklands far north of Hastings. Others bear basalt signatures, signaling upbringing near rocky riverbeds, where wild game was the mainstay. These isotopic maps reveal that soldiers from distant shires stood shoulder to shoulder, united by necessity rather than birthright. Skeletal remains show porous bone structures, suggesting vitamin D deficiencies from winter diet deprivations. Minor lesions on midshaft femurs hint at childhood malnutrition, a gentle echo of early privation. In that quiet revelation, each bone becomes a living ledger of diet and disease, a subtle history etched in calcium. Comparative nitrogen analyses between hand and ribs reveal uneven protein distribution, an undernourished core despite well-fed limbs. Elevated sulfur readings hint at sulfur-rich marsh plants in the grazing lands, likely consumed by horses rather than men. Which brings forward the enigma of equine absence. Skeletons scarcely pepper the trenches where cavalry once thundered. Acidic soils accelerate bone decay, dissolving calcium-rich remains before they can whisper tales to modern trowels. Iron-rich loam binds bone fragments tightly, obscuring horse osteology beneath a cloak of mineral complexity. Yet, rare horse teeth recovered in deeper layers exhale a faint mare's feed scent, a ghostly trace of stabled pastures. The absence amplifies their symbolic weight. Equine warriors remain phantoms in the archaeological record. In that space of absence, the missing horses gallop across imagination, reminders that silence itself can speak volumes. Beyond ashes and shards, small vials of earth hold fragments of ancient diets, suspended in amber clarity. Palynology exposes pollen of clover and ryegrass, indicating common pasture land rather than specialized breeding grounds. Yet bone cortices lack the robust morphology typical of heavy riding stock, suggesting lighter mounts prevailed. When soil pH hovered below neutral, horse bones dissolved into elemental whispers, leaving only soil chemistry's residue. Sulfation tests confirm enzyme infiltration, a slow alchemy that converts organic bone to inert mineral powder. Thus, preservation favors human remains in mid-alkaline pockets, while horse bones vanish into the subsurface tapestry. Each chemical reaction writes another chapter in Senlac's subterranean narrative, where science becomes storyteller. Ancient DNA samples from rib fragments confirm a mix of northern European lineages, a genetic mosaic forged in conflict. Contrast that with equine DNA. Limited haplotypes suggest selective breeding or perhaps selective burial practices. Horses may have been revered and retrieved for post-battle rites rather than abandoned in mass graves. Historical texts mention cutting down mounts for ransom or reclaiming valued steeds from enemy lines. Thus, the paucity of horse remains might reflect ritual retrieval rather than mere preservation bias. Radiocarbon dating aligns with dendrochronology of wooden stirrup fragments, situating cavalry mounts precisely in 1066. Through each interdisciplinary lens, Senlac Hill reveals itself as a layered palimpsest of life, death, and ritual. Isotope anomalies in dental calculus hint at herbal infusions, mugwort and heather, perhaps medicinal brews to soothe battle fatigue. Those botanical remnants connect modern phytochemistry to medieval folk remedies still whispered in tea leaves. Trace elements of lead and copper in pelvic bones suggest exposure to metalworking vapors, a byproduct of armor forging. Some individuals exhibit elevated chromium traces, indicating proximity to tanneries rather than battlefield trenches. Rare hyena teeth marks on bone fragments hint at scavenging patterns, shaping the post-mortem narrative of battlefield ecology. Equipment fragments coated in tannin residues reveal that leather reinforcements came from varied hide treatments across regions. In every microscopic shard, a microcosm of medieval environment and economy unfolds, weaving human and animal histories. When analysis slows, the hill exhales a silent testimony, chemical signatures that translate centuries, old diets into modern equations. Soil cores extracted beneath trophy monuments still yield elemental footprints of that fateful day. From carbon ratios to phosphate gradients, the land speaks in geochemical dialects that merge archaeology with alchemy. Researchers pause in reverent hush, listening to the soft murmur of data points converging into coherent storylines. This fusion of science and history casts Senlac Hill as both classroom and cathedral, teaching lessons in every grain. At the convergence of bone, earth, and spectrum analysis, archaeology becomes a gentle whisper guiding comprehension. Congrats! Tax dollars fueled the dig that unearthed ancestors' entrails. Candlelight dances across pewter plates heaped with honey-glazed pheasant and crusted pâté. The air swells with the perfume of crushed herbs, thyme, rosemary, and a faint trace of cinnamon. Oak beams overhead absorb the heady fumes of barrel-aged wine, each exhalation a mellow reverie. Bowls of candied fruits rest in gilded metal, their sticky zest whispering of distant orchards. Slender loaves of fine wheat crackle under gentle pressure, releasing a dusty warmth that soothes the nostrils. Steaming tureens exude a rich broth perfumed by rare saffron and the soft cling of slow-cooked marrow. Every inhalation feels cushioned by the velvety cloak of indulgence, as senses fold into a lullaby of flavor. The low murmur of pourers filling crystal goblets adds a gentle percussion to the ongoing hush. The feast evolves into a gentle symphony of aromas, each note a soft caress on the palate. Savoring yields a quiet contentment before the next course. Artisans lift ornate lids to unveil preparations bathed in honey's golden blush. Pears poached in rosewater gleam like pale jewels, their fragrance tracing silk drapes in gentle arcs. A subtle undercurrent of roast garlic coils through corridors, grounding sweetness in savory earth. Lumps of crystallized sugar crunch beneath incisors, echoing a distant memory of sun-warmed fields. The murmur of toasted almonds being crushed becomes a soothing backdrop to hushed conversation. Each sip of mulled spiced wine carries the warmth of Mediterranean shores, promising hidden summer. Toasts rise in muted cadence, enriching the air with laughter's soft pulse. The faint smoke of frankincense weaves through fare's perfume, wrapping all in a comforting haze. Aromas intermingle in a hushed dialogue, as warmth and spice cradle the assembly in an unhurried embrace. Soft whispers follow the languid procession of dishes. Candles flicker against polished walls, tracing amber trails across goblets brimming with mead. Silvered skewers bear tender lamb basted in honey-thyme glaze that clings like whispered secrets. The hint of truffles musk surfaces beneath each mound of steamed root vegetables. Crusted pastries sigh when broken open, revealing rich fillings murmuring of hidden opulence. A thin veneer of heated cloves drapes the hall in a subtle guard against the evening chill. Sealed flagons of spiced ale settle on tables, their brooding scent a gentle exhale. The crackle of a distant hearth adds an undercurrent of reassuring warmth. A cool breeze from arrow slits carries the crisp scent of blooming hedgerows between moments of hearth-lit comfort. The interplay of warm and cool notes creates a gentle rhythm, guiding the senses from one delight to the next. A hush settles over the chamber. Bowls of candied violet petals shimmer atop pewter rims, offering a floral sigh with each taste. Heaped platters of sugared almonds glint in the candlelight, each morsel dusted with rare rose sugar. Wheaten biscuits infused with caraway release a faint, nutty tang that steadies the appetite. A distant draught slips through, carrying lavender's soft lullaby to soften the banquet's edge. Golden chalices cradle spice cider that murmurs of autumn harvests, even in midsummer's heart. The soft hum of monks chanting below adds a reverent note to layered fragrances. Steeped in opulence, each breath dips into a tapestry woven from spices and thyme. The gentle clatter of relieved hands against goblets signals a subtle surrender to satiation. The banquet's crescendo of aromas subsides into a gentle hum where every scent folds into the next with natural grace. The hall feels both vast and intimately warm. Strips of candied citrus peel coil across plates, exhaling a bright sharpness that stirs a calm alertness. A whisper of toasted barley drifts from the kitchen's edge, promising humble balance to lavish fare. Flickers of scented torches guard against unseen chill, their smoky scent threading through taste and memory. Honey-laced cheese rounds appear on carved boards, their sharp creaminess cutting through richer courses. Soft laughter drifts, a subdued accompaniment to the ongoing feast of subtle luxuries. The scent of wax and wane clings to walls brushed by gilt tapestries steeped in incense's glow. Each flavor fades into the next with tender patience, inviting senses to linger in restful curiosity. Even conquest seems to soften under the feast's gentle spell. Apparently, spoils taste best with a drizzle of honey. In the hush of candlelit galleries, the Marquess and his vassals gather around a polished oak table. Sealed parchment scrolls lay ready, each bearing the weight of land transfers and newly minted titles. A soft scrape of quill on parchment punctuates the stillness like a distant heartbeat. The Marquess's steward unfurls the first charter, reading obligations owed in measured tones. Each clause settles into the air with the gravity of iron plowshares turning soil. The hall's torchlight glimmers on polished helmets displayed as trophies of past allegiances. Gentle nods confirm oaths sworn, bonds sealed without a drop of ink wasted. An undercurrent of promise hums between lord and liege, charged by mutual self-interest. The ritual unfolds with quiet precision, each word weaving the tapestry of feudal obligation. Power and duty flow in tandem, soft as whispered confidences. Behind curtained windows, emissaries exchange furtive glances over chipped goblets of spiced wine. Whispers trace the subtle balance of favor, trust measured in acres and coin, not emotion. The Countess watches, her fingers brushing a strip of silk, as alliances shift as smoothly as courtly dances. A single embroidered rose on her sleeve signals loyalty to two masters at once. Subtle glances between courtiers reveal hidden currents of ambition and wariness. Even jesters tread carefully, their quips calibrated to avoid upsetting the fragile accord. The low murmur of strategists poring over maps adds a cerebral rhythm to the ceremony. In one corner, a young knight leans in to learn the art of leverage from a seasoned baron. Political currents ripple beneath measured words, each concession a silent promise. Power here moves with the grace of a well-choreographed mask. A herald clears his throat, announcing new tax levies passed by the Marquess's council. The subtle shift in tone marks the moment wealth is extracted from peasant hands to gilded purse. Courtiers arch brows at revised dues, then nod slowly, acceptance etched into their practiced masks. Behind every nod, a silent ledger balances loyalty against profit. A single lute string hums in the corner, reminding all that art and opulence serve governance. The Marquess reclines, his velvet cloak pooling like dusk around polished boots. His voice carries the soft confidence of one accustomed to shaping realms with quiet words. In this chamber, contracts are sanctified as solemnly as any vow of knighthood. Economic edicts pass without fanfare, woven into the evening's fabric like gold thread. Authority feels comfortable here, as natural as breathing. Outside, a tolling bell marks the hour, each chime a reminder of time's role in power. A diplomat from a foreign court tilts his chalice, eyes steady in the flicker of torchlight. No translator's voice is needed. Gestures and courtesy surveys speak language enough. Subtle bows replace proclamations, signaling deference in ancient form. Laughter surfaces in low arcs, diffusing tension like rain on hot stone. The steward's ledger flickers closed, business concluded, for now. Pleasantries follow, a soothing aftertaste to the sharper tang of strategy. The Marquis rises, his silhouette tall against tapestried walls, summoning a respectful hush. Formalities give way to gentle banter, sealing agreements in softened tones. Diplomacy here feels like a lullaby sung in a stone cradle. Candles gutter low as courtiers disperse, their robes brushing the cool flagstones. The Marquis glances at a miniature sundial perched upon the table, time both ally and adversary. A chamberlain offers a final cup of honeyed wine, its sweetness a balm after austere negotiations. In that sip, the weight of contract and counsel drifts away, leaving only quiet satisfaction. The distant murmur of cathedral bells threads through vaulted ceilings. Each noble departs with measured steps, carrying the night's accords into shadowed wings. Even power's sharpest edges seem softened here, honed by courtesy and ritual. Plans for fairs and tournaments already flicker in whispered anticipation. The young squire leans in with a shy grin. "A smoother counsel I've yet to see," he quips, and polite laughter ripples through the hall. The stewards sweep away stray parchments, restoring the hall's serenity. Torches dim to embers as the Marquess closes the great doors behind departing guests. In the hush that follows, the true currency of influence lingers, warm as the final glow of candlelight. Velvet upholstery yields softly under fingertips. Gilded armrests cool to the touch, their metal edges smooth as river stones. Silk tunics drape in supple folds, each pleat brushing against finely stitched seams. Broad shoulders bear the weight of embroidered cloaks, warmth pressing gently into posture. The faint roughness of woolen hose pricks at ankles, a reminder of coarse labor masked by luxury. Polished oak tabletops feel solid and reassuring under slender goblets. Candle-dripped wax forms glossy rivulets along chair rails, tacky in their slow descent. Bronze candelabras sit heavy on marble plinths, their bases cool and unyielding. Fabrics and furnishings hum a tactile lullaby, guiding hands and senses through a landscape of comfort. Drape-lined alcoves, cradle plush cushions that sigh when settled. A faint tug of velvet at the wrist hints at underlying structure beneath sumptuous folds. Silken banners, overhead sway imperceptibly in a subtle draft, brushing eyebrows like whispered secrets. Gilded goblets clink with a gentle clarity, their rims sliding against lips as if inviting repose. The slight give of a carved leather stool eases tension in weary thighs. Tapestries woven with gold thread catch the candlelight, presenting a firm but yielding texture. Polished flagstones underfoot radiate the lingering warmth of torches long since dimmed. The tip of a finger tracing inlaid mother-of-pearl patterns sends soft echoes through the hand. The interplay of heavy and light textures crafts a sanctuary of sensation, each touch coaxing deeper calm. Cloaks lined with fur envelop shoulders in a gentle embrace, the hairs tickling the nape. Rings of cool ironwork on door hinges slide open with a firm sigh. The gentle weight of a gilt chalice settles into palm arches, grounding wandering thoughts. Intricate threadwork on doublets forms a delicate relief beneath fingertips. Pressing a hand to carved bench surfaces reveals minute ridges smoothed by generations of use. The soft friction of silk belts sliding through loops hums a subtle reassurance. Fine embroidered gloves slip on like a second skin, their inner weave barely perceptible. A stray thread brushes the back of a hand, a whisper of imperfection in this world of excess. Textures weave a silent narrative of privilege and power, each sensation weaving the mind closer to rest. The clasp of a jeweled brooch clicks with a crisp finality, its weight sealed in place. Velvet curtains close with a muted thud, cocooning the hall in muted hush. Candle holders tethered to walls feel cool beneath the fastening latches. Fine leather-bound ledgers rest on stands carved smooth by years of record-keeping. A gentle tug of heavy drapery parting reveals a pane of cool glass reflecting flicker light. Runners of thick wool muffle footfalls, softening every hesitant step. The grain of a dark wooden beam contrasts with the cushion's softness in subtle tension. A fleeting prickle at the nape hints at an errant moth skimming near sumptuous drapes. Even in sumptuous surroundings, tiny sensations assert presence, reminding senses they are alive and aware. The iron ring of a door latch clicks shut, its echo resonating through padded corridor walls. A sculpted marble bust's cold cheek brushes against silken sleeves should one lean too close. The smooth polish of inlaid stone panels offers a placid counterpoint to softened textiles. A brocade waistcoat's ridged pattern nestles into the curve of ribs with calm familiarity. Pressing palms together reveals the contrast of heated skin and cooling gowns. A low hum of distant water from a hidden fountain threads through the hall's tactile chorus. Velvet rope barriers feel firm yet forgiving under careful hands marking off sacred space. A final sweep across gilded floor rails gathers lingering warmth for another night's rest. Each texture, heavy or featherlight, guides the senses into a deeper stillness as the feast's echoes fade. The last touch lingers on smooth wood, imprinting memory into fingertips. Soft grooms gather unclaimed cloaks, their hands gliding across ornate fabrics. The closing of heavy oak doors seals in the tactile tapestry woven through the evening. In the hush that follows, every surface holds a story, each texture a silent lullaby. Luxury may be heavy, but it carries the softest weight of all. The night air settles softly around ancient stone walls, carrying the faint echo of spent candlelight. Shadows recede as warmth lingers in carved nooks, each breath a gentle invitation to rest. Tapestries drape in velvet hush, swaying to the silent lullaby of distant choirs. Power's weight dissolves like morning mist, leaving only quiet wonder in its place. Musky aromas of aged wine and honeyed gastronomy fade into sweet reverie. Sleep draws near, cradling mind and body in tranquil embrace. If you haven't yet fallen asleep, leave a comment below so I know who stayed up longer than I have, and let these whispered tales guide you into midnight dreams.